Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Bold, Fierce, Unstoppable. I'm your host, Zach Lyotis, and today's podcast, we have David Chambers, the authentic man who empowers men to create the exciting and deeply connected dating and sex life, along with relationship they long for by developing their true, authentic self. As a dating and intimacy coach, coaching men for over a decade, David guides men to create authentic attraction, building deep emotional connections, embody healthy masculinity, and experience connected sexual intimacy. Just sounds like chocolate to my body. By helping them build self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and self-leadership. David, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here and have this amazing conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Zach.
I just love what I just said. I wasn't lying when I said connected sexual intimacy. That is like damn chocolate to my body. Let me tell you, because there's nothing better than sexually connected intimacy. Because I've had a lot of sexually disconnected intimacy, not gonna lie, but sexual intimacy, I've had that too. But let's not stop there. That's too much juice at the beginning of the show. Let's talk about, I want to talk about the healthy masculinity, because we're always hearing this toxic masculinity, and everyone's about this toxic masculinity. And it actually drives me crazy, to be honest with you, because as a female or a male, we both have the masculine and feminine energy within us. And so if you're constantly attracting this toxic masculinity, you have to look within. I say this to all women, looking with your own masculine self to see why you're attracting that masculine outside of you. So let's talk about the positive, empowered masculinity and how we could change a toxic masculinity into empowered masculinity.
So if we're really wanting to like shift out of the toxic masculinity, one of the first things is you have to see what is toxic, right? And a lot of the time, like I like to look at kind of toxic masculinity, and it's like it's almost like over masculinity, but lacking in love, right? That's often the thing that's really missing, right? So it's like a lot of what I would call kind of immature masculine traits, kind of shadow masculine traits, like greed, a lack of care for the environment, dominating of the feminine, disconnection through the intellect, everything being about the mind, very competitive, what else, arrogant, all those sorts of things. And it's like those, when you look at those traits, right, and you go, okay, we can all probably say, yeah, those are if someone is showing up like that, those are toxic traits, right? One of the problems we have though in the world is that when you live in those traits, you're actually rewarded, definitely financially, for moving through the corporate world, for really embodying those traits. You'll be rewarded with promotions, more money, more cars, and then through having the money, the promotions and cars, you'll have status, and you may even be rewarded externally by other human beings telling you like you're great and awesome. So this kind of reinforces this toxicity that's like we get rewarded for. And as from a masculine man's point of view, ultimately a lot of us just want to be accepted. That's what we're looking for, right? We're longing for acceptance. So if we are accepted for these toxic traits, we don't even realize, because we are just feeding off the acceptance that we're getting externally, right? And I think the thing that's often missing when it comes to within toxic masculinity and men who exhibit these traits is a lack of love and care for themselves and other people around them, right? Because when you start to, embody love and care for other human beings and other people and even yourself, you start to lift out of these immature ways of being, because you start seeing beyond just yourself and your own selfish needs and greed, right? For yourself. And even, sometimes we can be selfish for ourselves and our tribe, our small tribe, and for gaining, accolades and so forth. And then we lift ourselves out of that and we start to move into an energy of love and care, right, for other human beings, other people in our lives, like people that we care about. And that starts to dissolve away. It's like something as simple as like, we'll look at the feminine and be like, oh, I can see I can have love for my own feminine. I can have love for the other feminine beings that are around me, which is all people, right? Because all people can exhibit that feminine energy. And then the love will also lift us out in terms of bring us to a place of like emotional and mental balance, right? For ourselves, but also for the people around us. And, the greed will be dissolved by selflessness. And, we'll start, instead of being all about owning everything and claiming everything, we'll start to be like, okay, let's start being generous and giving to other beings and be dependent on other people. It kind of just lifts us out of that state. And obviously there's some work to do on each of the kind of polarities of those things, to like bring them up. But love is I think is the big missing ingredient when it comes to toxic masculinity, right? Is that there's no heart, there's no love. It's all in the mind as well, right? If you really look at it, it's all in the head, right? So and it sounds so cliche, to drop out of the head into the heart. But the reason why it's cliche, there's a cliche for a reason, right? It's because it works. When you are just all in your head, you're actually really shut down to so much information that exists around you. You're not really feeling other people. Like even from a tactile point of view, if you're in a relationship, right, and you're being toxic, you're probably quite shut down to your body and how other people feel. And you're all in your head. And when we get in our heads, when we're uncomfortable, especially, we just get up into our heads and we just roll around in our thoughts. So for me, the key, and I work with a lot of men around this, is like when they do start to see these toxic traits, they want to be healthier men, they want to exhibit these healthier masculine traits, is I look at where are you immature? Where are you immature? It's okay to be immature. Let's admit that. First of all, is just to admit that. And like, how can we shift ourselves, raise our vibration upwards? And, bringing in some love, some self-love is always a thing. Self-love is a big thing for men. It's a struggle for men a lot of the time, self-love, because we feel we have to punish ourselves to reach our goals, or punish ourselves through life, because it's often the message that we're given.
So would you say, when speaking about this right now, I took some notes, would you say that men go through this difficulty because of the stigma of what they should be like while growing up? Like, men should be strong, they shouldn't cry, they should be the provider, they need to be the protector, they need to be all these things, but then it brings this toxic gladiator out of them, right? Everything that you've mentioned, but then they drop out of their heart and they're right in their head, depending on which head they're thinking with half the time. And I'm saying this because I've been on dating sites and it's not the right head that I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, allowing men to find that self-love, I know you said it's difficult for them, but how could they get into that place of that self-love if they're having difficulty, say, from their childhood, of maybe not feeling loved enough from their parents?
And that's a very common one, right? Is that if we were deficient in that love in our lives, then we're going to seek that outside of ourselves, right? That's one of the big things when we start seeking love outside of ourselves, and we are looking at other people and we're like, what can we do to make you love me, right? And first of all, we're in a bit of we're moving to adulthood and we're doing that. What can other people do to love me? We're in this place of like trying to get what we need from outside of us. So we start getting to a place where we start responding, right? We start reacting to people, right? Oh, they like me, so I need to do that. And that gets us into a poor position. One of the things that I see is that we are bombarded with messages, as you said, right, of what a good man is. Well, actually, we're probably lacking in that. We are bombarded with messages of what a good man is, and they're not necessarily the right messages. And if you look at, I always use things like our world leaders, because these people are in newspapers and newspaper articles constantly, right? Or celebrities, or more than anything, films. We grew up watching these films where these men were, it's only recently that they've started to think, oh, maybe we need to make intimacy inside of films look real. Like, imagine that. That's only come about in 2021 that we start thinking that this is something we need to do, and realize that has an imprint on us around sex and so forth, right? So there's a lot of messaging we get about how we should be. And then we also have this situation where if our fathers were around, right, and they were also not trained to be healthy men, right? Because most of our fathers would have come out of the World War years, right? Which is, in the UK, in England where I am, right? It's very much stiff upper lip. Don't talk about how you feel. suppress all your emotions. Don't talk about your troubles because you don't want to be weak. Now, we pick that up from our parents, our fathers. We pick that up from the other men around us, right? We pick it up from wider society. So men are bombarded constantly with this idea of like, this is how you need to be. And then you add into that things like work, making money, celebrity, sport, all these things. We constantly get that. And then it's like, where do we actually get these messages of what it's meant it looks like to be a healthy masculine man? And I feel like we're coming into an age where we're seeing more of that, right? But if we go 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was so little of that. And even those men who were in existence at that time, they were often ridiculed by the mainstream, right? The sort of men they were told soft or whatever, right? And that kind of erodes away their power to transform men.
That's where the metrosexual came in, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, a term that was like used to kind of, you know, almost abuse men. It's like, oh, you know, I was definitely, you know, go back 15 years. I was going to bars and clubs and women were talking to me and they'd be like, oh, you know, you're a really nice guy, but you're gay, right? And I'd be like, no, I'm not gay. They'd be like, well, you know, you kind of funny and you laugh and you're relaxed and you know, you wear color and all these sorts of things. I see you talking to lots of women. I was like, yeah, but no, I'm not gay. And I felt quite comfortable actually, is, you know, compared to other men. Like I knew men who would hear that being said to me and I could see the anger in their face and it would been said to me. And I was like, well, I'm not concerned because I don't think I'm gay. So I'm not worried about that. And even if I was, there's still not a problem for me, like, to entertain.
Yeah.
So it is this idea that we, you know, even like I do a lot of work with men who would identify as like nice guys, right? And even that is the polar opposite of the kind of toxic masculine man. But in fact, it's still coming from, to a certain degree, of the same energy of like, I need to seek approval from the outside of me. But nice guys have often realized like, oh, well, I don't want to be horrible. They've usually seen some sort of abuse or violence in their life. And they're like, I don't want to be one of those guys. So I can't show my anger. Anger is a bad emotion, right? So never be shown. So they go around appeasing everybody. But underneath all that is a lot of anger and resentment towards everybody else for not giving them what they need, even though they never asked for it. And then wondering why their relationships end up miserable. They have partners cheating on them. They have partners not wanting to be with, or they struggle to meet partners in the first place because they think the goal of being a good man is just being nice all the time,
Rather than being yourself.
Exactly.
See, this is why I want to have this conversation with you, because I talk to so many women. We're all going through the same trajectory right now. It seems like it's like, where are men that are not thinking with the wrong mind? Where are men that could be really the man that I'm seeking, that authentic man, right? Because take the mask off you. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to do what you got to do, just do. But I find that men go through a massive difficulty when it comes to expressing their truth of who they are. So what are some difficulties men face when they step into empowering themselves through that self-love? Because we all go through some sort of difficulty, but I can't imagine a man to open up his heart now and be like, I'm going to change to be an authentic man, and I'm going to have more of a nurturing, caring, feminine side. That could be difficult for that macho man.
Because what's going to happen in his world if he's, you know, if you've built your world around your personality, which many of us do, you know, our friends, our family, is your world will they will push against you, because people around us generally want us to be the way they want us to be, the way they're used to us being, right? So your world's going to push against you. If you try to change, people will start saying things to you like, what are you doing that for? Why are you going there? You know, I can think back to one particular friend of mine actually about 4 years ago. And I was like, oh man, I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. I'm just going to go yoga. I like yoga. It's a nice class. It's a great atmosphere. It's a bit more movement. And he was like, dude, yoga's for chicks. Why are you going to yoga for? He was like, oh, you're just going there because there's loads of girls there. I was like, no, I really like yoga. I really love it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I feel great in my body afterwards. And he was super dismissive for years. And then secretly, I heard, he told me recently, I saw him take a picture of a yoga mat on his Instagram. And I see that he's like, yeah, I've been doing yoga every morning. It helps with my golf. And I had to chuckle to myself. I had to really laugh because he pushed back against me for some of the ways I wanted to be, the choices I was making, right? So if you are suddenly like, okay, I want to open my heart, I want to be more connected, and it doesn't always happen just like that, you know.
Yeah.
Often a man will be like, okay, I don't want to be unhappy anymore, you know, or I want to meet the right sort of woman or man, or I want to, sometimes even I want to make more money, right? And if they find themselves in a, you know, they're pursuing this and they find themselves in a group, and you know, the group start to say, okay, you know, opening your heart to your emotions. And sometimes it's not even labeled like that, you know, sometimes it will just be like a men's group where it's like, oh, let's just talk, what's going on for you? And then you hear some other man's vulnerability, you hear another man sharing his story, and you think, oh wow, I'm not alone. So he starts to share and other men share. So this is the power of men's groups, you know, because in that, men see other men and realize that, oh, it's okay, I can be accepted if I open up, right? Which is kind of the opposite to what we experience in our work and our daily life. We go to work and, you know, maybe someone in a meeting, he, you know, maybe he's struck. I've seen it through work myself where someone has been seen to be struggling and upset, and people have ridiculed that person behind their back. And that is, for many men, our deepest fear is to be embarrassed and ridiculed. So when you start to shift, when you start to open your heart, when you start to raise your vibration, you become more connected to people, but also your internal world and the external world, right? Because I think that's one of the missing pieces, isn't it? We are actually disconnected internally and we're disconnected externally from the world. When you start to become more plugged in and connected, you may find the people you know already, they may push back against you. You might feel rejected, right? And I think the key to always remember here is it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about their map of the world, and you're challenging their map of the world. You know, it's something that I've seen a lot with men that I've worked with who are their partners. Even they're going through a bit of awakening, and their partner is like, "What are you doing? Why are you speaking to this guy? You don't need to do these things and all this." And you sit and you hear it and you go, have compassion for your partner, for they know not what they're doing. They are just thinking from their mind and they don't understand. They're just worried about losing you. So just go in there and come from this place of like, honey, I know you're worried. I know you're concerned, but I love you deeply. And this will make us happier. This will make our relationship better and all these things. And it's amazing when you put someone at ease like that. You know, you address not the words, but you address the worry and the fear and the emotion that's behind those. It softens. So as you do as a man, if there's men listening here or partners of men, as you start journeying down this road, there'll be pushback from the people you know. But, and it's a big but, you can also find other people that are on this journey, because there's plenty of them around. And unfortunately, they don't wear stickers or badges, so you can find them easily, but they can be signposted at certain type of events, certain type of gatherings, certain type of shops. And you have to just be able and willing to just open up and connect with those people, because those people will help you along your journey as well.
I think men groups are really important right now. And I've always said this because it gives men that opportunity to say, I'm not alone and I'm free to speak exactly how I feel, because their emotions were so suppressed for so many years. I think being able to open that gate up, I'm getting goosebumps just saying this. I almost want to cry saying this, because I've seen some of my ex-boyfriends, you know, I'd be like, they're going through an emotional uproar, and me being who I am, I'm like, babe, just cry it out, man. Like seriously, cry it out. At the end of the day, I'm not judging you. You're judging yourself. Like for me, I think that's hot. Like, you know, and not many women may think that, but if I see a guy, when I work with a lot like male clients and I see them crying, they're like, I can't believe I cried in front of you. I'm like, why? I'm like, let it go. Why are you letting that even suffocate you? Why are you letting that suffocate? You know, I find that maybe there isn't a lot of women that are supporting their men to step into an empowered sense. And I think this is why I wanted to have this show with you, because women need to be educated. I'm getting goosebumps saying this to you, but women need to be educated on how to support their men going through all the work. They don't know nurturing, they know providing. You know, we're the nurturers, they're the providers. But when we step into that together, then you could have this beautiful sexual connection, because now you're coming from a whole other energetic frequency. So me being the person that I love, like I said, I think men crying and letting it all go, that's sexy to me at the end of the day. So how could women support their men? And I do think it's crazy, but I do. How can how could women support their men when they're going through becoming this authentic self and stepping into their power? Because women have to do this as well too.
Yeah. Because what's going to start to come up is there's going to be emotions, and then a man might start doing different things. He might start trying to lead. He might start to follow a new purpose. He might start taking his life in a direction. And I think one of the things is acceptance, is the acceptance of when the emotions do come up, of not criticizing, not ridiculing, welcoming, even down to thanking. So this is if you want let's just say humans and dogs are not so much different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, the dating world, in some of the, especially the kind of pickup world, they would recommend that people read these books about dog training, right? And it used to sound absurd, right? And I never read any of them, but the concepts still really hold true. It's like, if your man comes home and says, "Hey, honey, I've had a terrible day. I'm feeling really upset." If you say to him, "I don't know what you're complaining about, you're fine, like my day's much harder," you are not welcoming him to share his emotion with you. But if you respond to him with, something like, "Tell me more. Thank you for telling me that. I'm not glad to hear, but I'm glad that you felt you could share that. Like, what else happened? Let's sit down. Let's get a coffee. Let's maybe go for a walk, whatever." And you welcome his expression. Welcoming a man's expression. When you welcome that expression and you reward him for that expression, and that sometimes will just be the case of like saying thank you, because really you're grateful that he shared it with you. So just express the gratitude there, right? And then you will get more of it, right? There'll be more. But if you chastise, you judge, reject, those things will fall away. He won't want to open those parts of him, because ultimately he wants you to love and care. So it's like, can we support them in our lives to open up their hearts, open up their kind of their more feminine aspects, right? Or even, if we talk about self-love, is like when you do see a man journeying in self-love, and sometimes for a man, self-love is just getting a beer. Sometimes it is going to the gym. Sometimes it's hanging out with his boys, all those things are acts of self-love for a man. So if you are criticizing and controlling and trying to stop him from doing those things, right? Obviously, all in good measure within the relationship and the man, like, you are stopping him from his expression, which means he will then try and hide those parts of himself from you, right? And we know where that goes over time. One of the other things is allowing for the leadership, supporting leadership, because I think a lot of men struggle with this idea of leading, right? Like, I speak to a lot of my followers are women as well, and they are like, "I want a man who will lead, who has purpose and drive." And I say the same thing. I was like, okay, cool. So when your man comes home and he's like, "Let's go to a movie," and he picks a movie, and you're like, "No, I don't like that movie. You always pick rubbish movies." Is he leading? Are you letting him lead? Mm-hmm. Or are you being critical? Are you being, those sorts of things? Or who cooks the food? He cooks. I'm not saying to, like, praise him, but to say, instead of being like, "Oh, you didn't cook those right. You're not doing that right. You're not chopping the onions correctly." All those things erode at a man and his drive and willingness to lead. And I'm talking really small things there, right? But when we do that inside of a relationship, we erode away. So if you want more of more leadership, right, and you want more of that, is to express a yearning, right? So it's like to say what you would love, not to say what you don't want him to do, right? So it's like to express something as simple as, I loved it when we went for that long walk in the park and we talked all afternoon. It was so amazing. I felt so good. I felt so connected. I felt turned on. I felt sexy and all those things. Now, if a man hears that, he's going to be like, this is good feedback. I'm hearing what she's telling me now.
He's reading between those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't need to feel the wind or anything too deep like that. He's like, "I got it. That's what she likes," and it's expressed in a way that's a yearning. It's not a pressure, right? As also is to be very subtle with it, because sometimes this yearning can feel like this yearning can feel like it could be placed on like a pressure, like I want you to do this thing. I'm saying it in this yearning manner, but really forcefully I want you to do it. So it has to be from a place of surrender as well, from a place of like, okay, I'm going to put it out there with non-attachment and allow it to unfold with that yearning. And this is a great way to empower him to be like, okay, this is something that's, I want to do more in a relationship. And as your man evolves, he will learn to feel what is necessary and what is needed. But at the baby steps is to express that yearning goes a long way.
Yeah, it's that communication. How could women communicate better with their men, especially when they're going through, clearing the old and stepping into the new? Because a lot of women don't even know how to communicate with their men when it comes to them changing and shifting, especially some men could shift a little quicker, especially if they have that great support system with them, right? So how is it a woman could communicate with her man in order to provide him what he needs, but man, she doesn't realize the benefits that she gets back in return. This is the thing that is very important for women to realize, that you give a little bit to your spouse, he'll give you a whole lot back. And it's the other way around too. I think communication is key. So how can we start that dialogue to help men become more aware and authentic within themselves?
Mm. Part of the communication, the important part of it actually, and I think probably the most important part for the kind of stereotypical man-woman relationship, is for a woman to listen, to actually listen. I coach men. I coach a lot of men in relationship and also single men. And almost every time man gets on the phone call to me, and I've seen this phenomenon for the last year, especially, they just want to tell me what's going on. And I don't speak. I just listen. I just purely listen. And a lot of men are just yearning for someone to actually listen to them and what they have to say. Not listen to the assumptions of what they think they're saying, but just actually listen to what they have to say. And with a place of non-judgment, especially, with acceptance. So like, okay, that's how you're feeling. Thank you. Understand. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Even to reflect it back, to go, this is what I feel like this is what you're saying to me. Yeah. But if when we can listen from that place of non-judgment, people feel safe. You feel safe to open up. We've all been in judgmental spaces, right? And you don't feel safe to speak. You don't feel safe to open up. So the first thing we do is hold space for the men in our lives. And that's just, hold that space of non-judgment, allowing an acceptance of who they are and what's coming through them or coming up from them in that moment. That can go a really, really long way to really healing his ability to express his emotions freely. And that's not going to be easy all the time, right? It's not going to be easy because he might be saying things that you find upsetting, you find triggering, you find hurtful. But if you can accept in the moment that is his expression, right? And also what I like to do, again, with my own relationship, but also with the men I speak to, is like, how can you listen from a place of non-personalization? How can I listen to you and not make it all about me, right? And what I'm thinking? What does this mean about me? What does it mean about my life? What does it mean about me? What does this mean I'm not going to have? And what does it mean? Because when we come from that small place of just me, any conversation can escalate into something, an argument or a disagreement very quickly, because we're not listening from a place of love and compassion for the other person. And then even the highest thing we want to be listening from a point of view is the relationship, right? The relationship has a higher entity than the two of us, right? Because when we can relate to each other from that point of view, it's not so personal. It's because we got this higher entity which we are nurturing and adding energy to, which is a relationship. So when you can listen from that point of view of like, this isn't all about me, what are they feeling, what's going on for them, how can I be of service to them, right? We can listen from a place of compassion that allows people to open up their hearts so much more.
So ladies, don't take it personal. Just let him express himself and listen. That's the biggest thing. I know women have a hard time listening. I know that. Sometimes I do as well. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I do, because I just want to say something. But yeah, listening is a skill that many of us have to really work on when it comes to that. What would you tell every woman out there that's having a hard time finding that authentic man to be true to who he is, that is seeking that man? What would you tell every woman that is in that time of, being online or dating online or whatever it may be? Because everything's online now. So we're missing a lot of factors when it comes to dating these days, because everything is online. I've caught so many catfish that I've actually taken myself offline, because I'm like, I'm done fishing for cats. So, but I know a lot of women that have this, I have one of my friends that says, I have a cut and paste situation. So I asked them questions. I said, oh, so you're doing a 3-month interview process. I can't do that. That's not authentically who I am. So I can't do that. But for every woman that's going through this single life and to want something that wants to date someone, regardless of who you want to date, how do they go from step 1 of being authentically them to connecting with authentic man at that time?
So I think this is multi-layered, right? And I think it starts with your relationship to your inner masculine, right? And I always start there. It's like, what's your relationship to your inner masculine? What's your relationship to your boundaries, right? Your direction, to your, holding space, to your mindfulness, to your presence. What's your relationship to your own masculine? Because that will be externalized in your world, right? So if you keep meeting these men who are showing up,
go on.
if you keep meeting men who are a certain way, it's like, okay, what's going on for you? Where do you need to start bringing balance? Where do you need to bring maybe there's some healing, maybe there's some more is maturing in this area, of like, okay, cool, okay, keep meeting men in a certain way. How do I start working on my boundaries a bit better? How do I start to be more present? How, start to work on that, right? First of all, that's a really inner one, right? Or it could be even, for some women, it's a point of their inner feminine, right? It's like, how do you need to dance more, move more in your body, be more creative, be more spontaneous in life, connect deeper to your own emotions, right? Is there some emotions there you're also running away from? So that's one aspect. And then the next layer up on top of that, right, is looking at your life. Is your life an expression of those things, of your values, the things that you want to draw to you? So like, say for instance, you want to be a man who is in the process of awakening, an authentic man who maybe lives his life dreams, and maybe you're looking for someone who does things like meditation and yoga and has a breath work practice and stuff like that. If you're going to your local bar every month or every week, looking for someone, or you're on Tinder and you're hiding the things that you want in someone, or you're not saying the things that are going on in your life, then you're not going to attract the right sort of person into your life, the sort of compatible person into your life, right? That's another layer. Dealing with your fears. What fears and assumptions do you have about men? Let's go there. Fears and assumptions about men. How do you fill in this the rest of this sentence? All men are, and all men are, whatever words are coming on after that, right? There's some work there to do, because we all have something that goes after those things, right? That's a big part. And then I think the last one is like, and I kind of touched on this before, is like, where are you being? Where are you being in this physical realm to meet men? Where are you finding yourself? Like, I know everything is online these days. It really is. And, there's good and bad to that. But if you're looking for someone who is doing certain work, are you going to those sorts of places? Are you going on yoga retreats, for instance? Like, I know this is a small example, but are you involving yourself in those pursuits? It's the funniest thing is men come to me for dating and relationship help, and then 3 months later they're like, oh, I've had all these great new hobbies and I'm really enjoying my life. And I'm like, yeah. And then I'll get a message from a guy 3 months later. He's like, oh my God, I've met the most amazing woman, because now I know how to, talk and hold boundaries, blah, blah, blah. But also what it is he's actualizing his dreams. He's in the sorts of places, the sorts of women he wants to meet. So it's like, where are you in the world? Where are you going? Where are you being? Because if there's part of you that wants to express, go express that. Because there you will find your joy, because you are expressing your heart's deepest desire, but also you will interact with other people that are expressing their heart's deepest desire, and you will connect with them.
I love that you said that. I always tell the girls that, like, what are your hobbies that you want to do with someone? And they'll say, I don't know. And I'm like, well, how do you expect to find a man If you don't know what you want to do, what do you want to do with him? Well, I want to travel. Then go ahead and travel. I guarantee you'll meet men traveling. Trust me, I've met tons of men traveling. You know what I mean? Like, you'll meet men wherever you are. So I think that's really important for women to understand that you're not going to just be meeting men swiping right and left at the end of the day. And being being true to what your description says. I think my description is very intimidating sometimes. That's why I was like, okay, no one's swiping right on this one, because I'm straightforward and to the point with it, and it can be intimidating. I know men get intimidated by women. Let's talk about that for a bit, because I know there's a lot of strong, powerful women out there. At the end of the day, we're not going to lower the bar because we want to mate. There's that. I'd always tell women, if you feel like you need to lower your bar, raise your bar that much higher, because that man's going to show up for you. So how do we deal with men going through intimidation when a woman is, I don't even like to use the word powerful, but is more aware, awakened? I don't know. Help me out here, David.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I think this
Straightforward.
comes in a few different forms, right? And one of the most common ones I see is the powerful woman. We are describing a woman as powerful. And this is not all powerful women, but this is the kind of standard one I come across when I work with men, and even the women I work with, right? Is that what they've done is they've embodied so much masculinity, right? Because they need to be successful in this world. So what happens then is they are in their masculine a lot more than they are in their feminine, right? And I believe that we have a balance. We all have some innate balance, some essence type balance, right? I'd say I sit at like maybe 30% feminine, maybe even 30, in some areas of my life, and definitely more. Like on my emotional side, I can be really, outpouring, or even my ability to communicate is definitely can be quite flamboyant. But for many women, they maybe say, 70%, 80% feminine, right? But in the working world, right, they are having to embody their masculinity 90% of the time, right? So we look at those women and go, wow, powerful woman. I look at that woman and go, she's unbalanced. And not in the fact that like, okay, mostly unbalanced and for that. It's that when she's hanging out in what isn't her natural essence, right? And she's forcing that as well, right? It's taking a lot of energy to force that. So now when it comes to meeting a man, she now sits across a table dating a man, and she's sitting there, she's in a masculine, right? Because that's safe for her, right? Because often with this case as well, it's just speaking to what I've seen so often, is those same women also have a distrust of their own feminine, right? It's not safe for them. They don't believe it's safe to be feminine because of the world we've grown up in, right? We've all grown up in a world that suppresses feminine, that hurts the feminine, right? So they're now sitting across the table from a masculine man, and they're in them a mature masculine. It's a competition. Who's more masculine than who? I'm paying for these drinks, or it's it's work talk, it's money talk, it's showing that they're powerful, capable, and independent, right? Because they need to do that because they have this feminine that they're not safe in, right? Instead of bringing their more feminine aspects to the table, right? Which is where they want to go. And that's the healing, right? So if you meet the right man, and I say the right man is a man who is deeply in touch and can see that, okay, this woman is operating from her masculine, it's not functional for her, it's dysfunctional, right? And he's able to relax her, soften her, allow her to be in her feminine, even really directly say, look, you don't need to be like this. It's cool. With, you're safe here, and that might take some time on a date. And then she can enter in this realm, right, of healing and start to heal her own feminine, right? And be like, my God, there was all this femininity that I wasn't expressing. And now I feel happy, I feel joyful, right? And I guess this story to a certain degree is really telling for me, because this was my partner when I met her, right? I don't forget that she, sat on my sofa all upright and rigid in a very work skirt. And I was like chilling, lying about on the sofa and talking. And she was very, rigid. And it was because her whole life she'd spent operating in her masculine, which was very tiresome for her, causing all sorts of grief and anxiety, right? Because she didn't think it was safe to be a feminine woman, because that's what she'd been told all her life. So I see this in my partner, but I see it in a lot of women, even the women she works with. She comes across as like, we have conditioned a woman to say, for you to be successful, you need to be just like the men. You need to be just like the immature men. You need to be all about, shaming and blaming and being judgmental and being competitive, right? So if you're a powerful woman, ask yourself, how do I feel about my feminine? How do I feel about being there? How do I feel about expressing those things in my life, but also with the men that I meet? And if you're like, that feels, I don't really want that, you know, no, I don't, it doesn't feel, I don't feel safe. Then there's some work to do. There's some healing to do, which is beautiful, right? Because it's fun. It's great work. I feel like for me, from my point of view, I do it with a lot of men, is like getting into your feminine can be really beautiful work. You can express emotion, you can dance, like you can feel your body, you can feel connected to the earth, to the ground, spend time with other feminine beings. It's beautiful work to do. And obviously it's not all beautiful, right? Because there's always going to be some hard stuff, but the payoff, on the other side, right, is deep connection with yourself and in the relationships you create.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, I know I had a very strong masculine energy to me, boy. Woo! I even used to say it. My masculine is dominating my feminine. My spirit used to say that to me. Get into your feminine, get into your feminine. So I got into belly dancing. I got into pole dancing. I got into all that crazy stuff because that's what got me into my feminine. But then I started dating someone and he totally brought me into my feminine. But then what I realized, because I was so comfortable with, I'm comfortable with my masculine at the end of the day, that my masculine side's very wild. That's why I was laughing when you were talking about it. I was like, oh, what's my masculine side? That's probably why I'm attracting the crazy that I'm attracting, to be honest with you. But speaking about the feminine, I think it's really important that we have that great balance, but we're also able to go from one extreme to another extreme. But when you're with someone or you want to build that relationship with someone, I think it's important that we do allow the other person to express their masculinity or their femininity, whatever it may be. But I find that I could drop into my feminine really quick, but I could drop into my masculine really quick. I'm very good at balancing that out, but my feminine has so much love to give that it becomes overpowering. And I know women that have this so much love to give, they just want to give. But for a man, that could be a little too much for them too. Like, this is foreign now. Like, this woman's ready to love me. I've never felt this kind of love before. Trust me, the last guy I dated, I even said that to him. We were traveling. I said, I have a lot of love to give. And he says, oh, I know you do. And it's overpowering for them. And I know this because I've had these conversations with men and they can't handle that kind of love. So I try to pull back and I'm like, well, that's not even who I am, because I just want to love. Like, that's all I want to do. I just want to love. So how are women able to deal with that? Or how are maybe their partners or spouses, whatever it may be, whoever's listening to the show, that are able to bring that good balance where you're giving enough love, but not overextending the love?
Now, my kind of what my learnings is like, I quote a guy who I love his work. His name's John Wineland, and there's a podcast he did a while ago I listened to, and he's like, the feminine is like a bucket with a hole, right? It just wants love, and it's never enough, right? It's never enough. You can keep on giving. You can keep on giving to the feminine. It's never enough love. And I've experienced this again in the relationships I've been. It's like, as a man, I'm like, and I feel like many ways love is, especially active love, where you're giving. It's very masculine, really, isn't it? It's giving. You're taking action. You're giving it to someone, right? So with those guys, what you're going to find is that there's actually a deficiency. There's an immaturity in their feminine, because for them to receive, they struggle to receive love, right? Like, this was a problem for me for many years. I could give love to a certain degree in certain ways, right? In very small ways. But receiving large amounts of love was a struggle for me. It was really hard. And it wasn't until I started to nurture my own emotions and feelings and open up that well, because it's like a well, you start to feel your feelings. And when people give you their emotion, their love, you're like, I can take this, right? And it's also around deserving. Do you feel you're worthy and deserving? And again, that's another thing around, nurturing your inner feminine, right? So I would say to those women who have a lot of love to give, it's like, okay, cool. You've got this masculine energy to give, right? How do you receive love? Are you able to receive, right? Because often when we want to give something all the time, it's because we struggle to also receive it in return.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how can you start to surrender to accepting and receiving love? And that will bring balance to you, and it will fill your cup and fill your partner's cup. It's just like, how can I be in this receiving of the love that's flowing from my partner instead of being forceful with the giving, right? Because it can feel quite forceful, it can feel quite smothering,
Mm-hmm.
because it's often a default way, because it's like, well, let me do this because I can do, because of a fear of, if I don't give and I stop, will I receive?
Mm. And I always feel like I'm receiving love. Like that's one thing that I feel love comes from so many different areas in the world that I always look at. Love just doesn't come from a partner that I'm with. Love comes from everything. So I love giving that love. I love receiving. I love when people say, Zach, I love you. And I'm like, I love you too. You know what I mean? So I'm that little oddball. But ladies, if you find that you're smothering your man with love and he doesn't know how to take it, plug up that bucket and just receive the love that he's giving you. Even if it's to cook dinner, he's cooking you dinner, having a glass of wine together, going for that walk. Instead of criticizing him that he didn't cook the fish properly, he didn't put enough salt on it, just love the fact that you're eating dinner, and maybe he'll wash the dishes for you at the end of the day, but give that love in return by being fully present with him. That's exactly what I'm feeling here. And it's interesting because you said exactly that it's hard for people to receive love, especially when they don't have that much self-love or don't understand how to love, because they've never had that before. And right now, what I'm feeling and having this conversation with so many women, it's like they're frustrated because they want to give love, they want to receive love, but they're not doing that deeper work where you said, like, all men are, all women are. Like, finish that sentence, because when you said all men are, I'm like, incredible. Like, that was my word. I'm like, yum, I love men. Like, trust me, I love my men. So when I'm thinking that, when I say all women are, I could say dysfunctional because I feel dysfunctional sometimes. You know what I mean? And that's just, I'm not looking at women in general. I'm looking at myself as a woman. Like, yeah, I could be dysfunctional sometimes because I live in two different worlds in my life. I live in the human realm and I live in a whole different other realm, right? So that could be too much for men too. So I understand what my pros and cons are to me, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of women that have this nurturing, caring, have this gift. There's a lot of men that have this gift as well. Men don't know how to handle this gift, because I've seen that with a lot of men. My former lovers, have been so many awakened men, but they're like, oh, I'm feeling this thing. I'm like, yeah, let it out. Let's see what we're getting. Oh no, not going there. But yet they'll support me on the journey. And that was like, you're supporting me. Yeah, I'll support you, but I don't want to go there with you. And I'm like, I'll take that. I respect what you're going through. But it's really about, for like, that balance is what I'm getting. And that's where I think we're all off kilter right now. I think there's a massive imbalance going on right now. So how could we bring women, men, like I said, all the listeners that are listening to this podcast or watching the video, how can we bring more balance into the divine masculine, feminine, interconnecting with each other, so that we are in harmony, not only with ourselves, but with our partner as well?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. How can we? I think there's a big part around, obviously it starts with the self,
Mm-hmm.
how are you bringing yourself into balance? Like, what sort of practices do you have to bring balance to your life? Because we live in a world that puts us in our crazy heads all the time, working, mobile phones, running around. We've all got somewhere to be, here, there, calendars, everything like that. But how do you bring yourself into your body? Have a practice of bringing yourself into your body, whether that is a meditation practice, whether that's a breath work practice, whether that's a yoga practice, a dance practice, whatever. And when I say practice, I say the word practice of just something that you do often, even daily, because anything you do often or daily, it becomes a practice because you're getting better at it, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
just doing it constantly. I could even argue that, podcasting is a practice because you do it often, and you're trying perfecting, you're trying to get better, you're trying to get deeper into it. So any of those sorts of practice, especially, will bring us more into our bodies, right? So that bring us more into our bodies. And if you're in a partnership, you can do some of these practices together, breath work practices together, bring you much deeper with your partner, especially if they're open to that sort of thing. Even certain types of meditation, even, we haven't really gone there today, but these many kind of, tantric rituals, tantric experiences that you can do bring you much deeper and connected to your partner in their kind of wholeness. So in terms of partnership, but also when you're alone, have these practices that bring you more centered to yourself, more feeling of the world, right? And this will bring more stillness to you, yourself and your mind, and allow you to connect deeper with yourselves and also the people you meet. Like, this is something that's is so vital to the work, I think, is like bringing stillness, bringing like connectedness to oneself, one's body, because we are so out of connection with our bodies because we've been told that our minds have all the wisdom, and it's been shown now that, there's more pathways that go from the body into the brain. The body holds wisdom, the body holds trauma, all this information is held in the body, right? And it's the mind, really, the brain is just a processing place, right? It takes this information, it processes it, and then it sends it back out somewhere. So it's a case of like learning to reconnect with that. I think that's such an important part.
Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned tantra, and I realized that, whoa, we've had a great conversation, but I did want to get on the sexual aspect. So let's get into, once we're in balance and once we're in the bedroom, how all this really, I mean, if some women haven't even felt this that I've spoken to, I know women that haven't had an orgasm and they've been married for 25 years. And that to me is mind blowing. I'm like, I could walk and think of something and have an orgasm. Like, I don't know how you're not having an orgasm. So let's talk about, when we get into our body, when we have that practice with our breath, when we connect with our partner, what happens in the bedroom? And you said the word tantra. And I mean, that's all we could say right there, but let's talk about the energy frequency that goes with that.
Yeah. Look, I've been teaching tantra workshops for like the last year. It's come out of my own learnings, my own experience. And one of the things that we see, the example you give there, women have never had an orgasm. And I like to say it's a two-way street, if you're in a relationship. My belief is, and I'm starting to cultivate this, is that both partners are responsible for the pleasure that is created for both partners, right? As well as anything like erections. Because it's a big thing for men. Is like, oh my God, I lost my erection, or I can't get it up, or I come too quickly. Both partners are responsible for that. So when we become fully responsible for what happens in the bedroom, right? Not just, oh, my partner doesn't please me, it's all their fault. It's also your fault too. Because obviously, either you don't know what pleases you, which I think is a big part, right? Or you're not communicating to your partner what pleases you, or you're not communicating to your partner that they're not pleasing you. Now, if you're not responsible for those things, and it goes both ways. Like I said, I also believe, I say to men, it's your responsibility that your partner has a wonderful time. From a tantric point of view, it's like there's nothing more joyful for a tantric man to see his partner in deep pleasure, right? So there's a lot of things that have to come, right? Relaxation is a really important one. A lot of us is bringing the stresses of our lives into the bedroom, and we can't relax, we can't enjoy ourselves, we can't enjoy sex, right? Because of we're too stressed. A lot of us have poor polarity in our relationships, right? Which also then affects our enjoyment of our partners in the bedroom, meaning that, if you're a female male relationship, the man is not necessarily in his masculine when it comes in his life, but also in the bedroom, and the female's not in a feminine space. It allows for this polarity that sometimes is off kilter, right? That doesn't gel well in the bedroom, right? Doesn't generate that attraction, that spark. And then there's a lack of presence, because I think presence is I feel like everything springs from presence, right? So when we're in the bedroom together, we're not actually really there together. We're not present deeply with each other. We're not able to look into each other's eyes and feel what our partner is feeling, right? So when that's missing, that connection is missing, right? So if we're not relaxed, if we're not deeply connected through presence, right? We don't have polarity in the place that we want it to be, right? And we're not willing to communicate what we enjoy and what we like and not be responsible for that, it's very hard to have great sex. It's very hard to have deeply connected sex, right? You may, if you're sleeping with many people, you may have the odd amazing experience because, luck plays a part, right? Or maybe someone is unconsciously able to tap into these things, right? which was definitely the case for me in my younger years. I was unconsciously able to really feel what was happening in sexual experiences, which made my sexual experiences amazing. But I didn't know why. I just was like, oh, this feels good. This feels good. I'm going to do this. But it's only now as I've got more mature and learned these ways that I'm like, I can now do this deliberately through choice and consciously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the kind of tips that I give often is like communicate about what you want, what you enjoy, what you love, what you would like to experience, and take it a step further. Even communicate about your fantasies. What would you, and remember, fantasies aren't things people want to do necessarily. Fantasies are fantasies, right? So it's like, what fantasies would you like to have? Communicate about those. Maybe if you're trying to spice things up a little bit more in your relationship or your dating life, is to start listening to podcasts and read books about sex or articles. Send them to your partner. There's nothing more beautiful than sitting with your partner, listening to a podcast or a television program or a series that's about sex and how you can deepen that, because you're listening together, you can discuss, you can get deeper into it, right? When you are in the bedroom, get rid of all of your devices. Anything that has a screen,
Mm-hmm.
either cover it or remove it, right? Cover it or remove it. Simple little things after that is like, is the room you are having sex in, is it destined? Is it decorated for the most beautiful intimacy?
Mm.
Can you get some cloth? Can you drape it over maybe you've got some unsightly, what's it called, cupboards or drawers. Maybe you can find some beautiful offcuts of satin or silk from somewhere. How does it smell in there? Does it smell like old baby sick? I don't know why that came to me, but that's what came to me. Do you need some incense in the room? Do you want to adjust the lighting? Do you just have harsh lighting? Do you need to put some candles around the room so it feels like a boudoir, that it feels like a foreign land? Because our environment, right, much like doing psychedelic drugs, our environment and setting dictate how we feel inside of it, right? So if we create the setting for things, right, on the external world, and then we create the setting for the internal, right, which is the communication, the connection. There's even, meditations and breathwork exercise you can do to feel more connected, and things around presence. When we do all those things, our general sexual experience is elevated to, this transcendent experience that goes well beyond what we're used to experiencing. And we're left with like, wow, like, I don't want to go back to what I was having before.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I did another podcast with a host. Her name was Susan Branton, and she talks about that as setting the scene. It's really about setting that scene. And as you're describing that, I'm like, yes, it's exactly what it is. Like, really bring that space in there. Even when you talk about communication, I had someone say to me before, have you ever faked an orgasm? I said, yeah, I wanted to get the hell out of there quick. Right. He said, that was the worst thing you could do to that man. And I said, why? I said, because you made him feel that he satisfied you, but yet you're thinking about running away. So he thinks like he's a superhero. He's going to continuously do that. And it made me kind of think that way. Like, wow, I never thought of that before. So really, when it came to connecting and having that explosive sex, it was really about everything you said, is really connecting. It was about body. It wasn't even about an orgasm at the end of the day. You always end up having a great orgasm, but it was about really connecting with one another and really even feeling each other's bodies, just touching, just touch could give you an orgasm. Women need to explore their bodies that much more too, because they're so disconnected and they're so afraid to express. This is what I want. It's about opening up to receive. And this is one thing I noticed with a lot of women, because I help women transition through divorce. And they're saying like, I haven't had an orgasm in 15 years and I'm moving energy through there. And I'm like, oh, you have a lot of other stuff that's sitting just in that area there. All that emotional buildup, you'll never get an orgasm because you can't even stand the person you were in bed with after a while. Right? So I think it's really important. Like, this conversation has been so beautiful because it's really eye-opening how we could balance our divine masculine and feminine, not just to attract the partner that we want, but to really be in tune with our own self and to bring that orgasmic life that we want to. At the end of the day, a woman could have an orgasm just with a thought, like a man could have a boner or an orgasm with his own thoughts at the same time, right? We don't need that partner. We want that partner, right? And the more you could feel your own body, the more that you could tap into that. Touch alone. I know touch alone. You could touch me the right way. I'm like, I'm about to fly off the handle. And I know a lot of other women are like that. Let's just put it all out there. Since we're talking sex, we do have a lot of sex podcasts coming up too. But at the end of the day, women, you have to realize, or men, whoever's listening to this podcast, you have to realize if you don't know your body, if you don't know what really excites you, if you don't know your GPS, you will never be able to guide a man to bring you satisfaction. And this also goes for a man as well. If you don't know what you want in the bedroom, if you don't communicate with one another, then not only is it you have problems in the bedroom, you have problems in your relationship at the end of the day. And that's all, that's what it is. And if you have problems in your relationship, again, you have problems in the bedroom. So get with one another, support one another, stop putting each other down, really start empowering one another to be authentically you. It's not comfortable. Nothing's comfortable, but you're never going to get comfortable if you're staying in this discomfort of not being able to communicate. So get uncomfortable, get naked, start touching each other, start touching yourself, really get into, when I say touch your inner heart, open up your heart, find that self-love to really express who you are and give yourself that permission to be fully naked with yourself and your partner being fully naked with themselves. Because at the end of the day, Tantra is more explosive than the little bit that we gave you here. And it's not all about the orgasm at times. It's really about the connection. Really about the connection. I want to say thank you so much for being on this podcast. I had such a great conversation. I mean, I could go on for another hour with you. I could feel it. I just want to keep on going, but maybe we'll get you on another show, have you come on and really, let's talk about Tantra. Let's talk about connecting on a sexual level. Let's talk about it all and really start motivating and awakening, not only the masculine, but the feminine, because that's what we all are within our own self. So thank you so much. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your gift. Thank you for being you, authentically you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me. It's been beautiful. It's been a beautifully weaving and flowing conversation.
Yeah, it's such amazing. Just like masculine and feminine should weave and flow. That's the way I felt this conversation went. So for everyone, if you want to get a hold of David, everything's going to be in the show notes below. Like I said before, get in tune with yourself, masculine and feminine energies. We are both one. There's no other difference. If you want to find that lover that you want to bring into your life to have an explosive relationship, trust me when I tell you it's out there, but you got to work within yourself first to find it on the external world of you. Get a hold of David. Like I said, all of his contact information in the show notes below. Thank you for being with us today, and we will see you again on the next podcast. Bye for now.